So I want to start tonight with the breaking news of the president of Kazakhstan declaring a state of emergency in the country's largest city of Almaty. Now, to Americans, they know Kazakhstan from the movies, but to the rest of the world that's watching closely, these protests started small, simply over high gas and fuel prices, much like the gas hikes we've seen here in the United States. But these protests spiraled so much over the weekend that the president had to respond with this.
I urge you to be prudent and not to yield to provocations from inside and outside, to the euphoria of rallies and permissiveness. Appeals to attack the offices of civilian and military departments are completely illegal. They are crimes, and punishment may follow. The government will not fall. We need not a conflict, but mutual trust and dialogue.
Now, the president added later, after no one took that advice, quote, both your well-being and your country's place in the modern world are now at stake. So let's pull back the curtain for a second and look at the country itself and why all of this is important. So you'll see in this map here, Kazakhstan is the meat to this Russia-China sandwich. However, Kazakhstan shares more than half of its border with Russia. It's the largest landlocked country with zero access to any oceans. But what it lacks in water, it's got a whole lot of something else, something superpowers love, oil. So why these protests and why now? Well, the protests started in the western region of Kazakhstan, which is where most of the oil comes from and where most of the oil workers are located. Now, back in 2011, there were a number of oil workers who were actually killed in protests demanding better pay and working conditions. Well, as of late, a lot of those same people in that region, they're now protesting, demanding the price of fuel be cut in half. Well, retailers, they agreed to cut the price by a quarter, but the president says that further cuts, they're impossible, all because of production costs. Now, there used to be government caps on the price of fuel in Kazakhstan, but as of late, the government decided to lift those caps, almost welcoming in capitalism to its gas prices. Now, if you know capitalism, you get it, which is why we're seeing video like this. Violent protests in Kazakhstan's largest city that mirror the violent protests we saw here in the United States every day in the summer of 2020. Now, one big reason why this is very important, Kazakhstan is a big part of Russia's sphere of influence. So much so, in fact, that when the Soviet Union actually broke up, Kazakhstan gave up its nuclear weapons and promoted peace and mediation in international disputes. Interesting trivia fact for you, Kazakhstan is one of the most important world mediators and has mediated numerous conflicts around the world. So what would be the West's equivalent? Well, this would be like Canada, who is in the American sphere of influence, on the brink of bursting at the seams. So joining us now with his take on the situation in Kazakhstan, we are joined by former Pentagon official Michael Malouf. Michael, I know you have a lot to say on this, but kind of what do you make now of this recent state of emergency in Almaty?
Well, it's been forthcoming for many, many years. The people there are generally very poor. Just that little bit of hike it's LPG, liquefied petroleum products, which they use for their cars and in many cases for their fuel for cooking. It went up like the equivalent of 28 cents, but for the average Kazakh, that's a lot. Mm-hmm. The country is polarized in terms of rich and poor. There's hardly any middle class. I mean, there is no middle class, and this is and for years, going back to Nazarbayev, the original president, he and the current president are very much seeking wealth and a lot of accumulation of wealth, and the people have seen this. And they're basically fed up. And what's problematic here is that Kazakhstan is, as you point out, the meat of the sandwich between Russia and China. Mm-hmm. Well, this is one of the few areas where Russia and China have issues. for influence in Kazakhstan. Kazakhstan was part of the former Soviet Union, as was Kyrgyzstan, Uzbekistan, Tajikistan, and so on. So it's Kazakhstan is perhaps one of the richest of all of those countries. It's the most liberal Muslim country of the Central Asian countries, but at the same time, it has tended to want to gravitate more toward Russian influence as opposed to Chinese influence. The capital used to be in Almaty, which is further south. But that became so overwhelmed by Chinese influence that the previous president moved the capital to Astana, out in the middle of nowhere, to be about 800 kilometers north, to be much closer to Russia. I've been to both locations. I used to, by way of background, when I was at the Defense Department, I helped train border guards in Kazakhstan, as well as in Uzbekistan and Kyrgyzstan. And the influence of the Chinese need for land and agriculture has pushed China's desire for greater access into Kazakhstan to grow crops and to farm, and you can see that in the lower portions of Kazakhstan today. So it's the people themselves are just being whipsawed, and they're not getting any better economically, and as a consequence, you're seeing what you're seeing. And this could spread. And the problem for China and Russia is the fact that if the more radical Islamists are to take over, for China especially, which borders right on the Xinjiang province in the western portion, where you have the Uyghurs, this could create real problems for China.
Now, Michael, as we're looking at that, can we throw up that map there one more time, Director Peter, for me? That map there, you see on one side, you've got Kazakhstan. The other side, you've got a little country we've been hearing about a lot lately, Ukraine, on the other border, on the other side of Russia there. When it comes to these two countries, what do you think Russia's going to do as far as putting all of their eggs in which proverbial basket, as we'll say? Are they going to focus on Ukraine, or do you think they're going to pull back and go more to Kazakhstan? What do you see kind of happening? I got about a minute left for you.
From the Russian perspective, I would say the Ukraine problem is perhaps the most critical at the moment because of what is perceived by the Russian side to be an encroachment by NATO up to and to include Ukraine, which wants to join NATO and in fact the European Union. Kazakhstan is an entirely different thing, and that can be handled. That's not as urgent as you have with the dilemma in Ukraine. After all, the Russians have put in about over 100,000 troops on the Russian side up against Ukraine, just in case the Ukrainians decide to do something that will create that will prompt a war. I mean, it's that imminent. I think that more assistance can come from Russia to assist Kazakhstan and try to relieve that dilemma. The president of Kazakhstan tonight has actually put a cap on the price of gas. It's actually brought down the price of gas below what it used to be before he instituted these measures, these other economic measures that prompted the price rise. So now, and he may have to be compelled to do this across other areas too, in order to mollify the people so that they don't rise up. And it's very cold there right now, so it would be a real problem for them if things kicked up.